Well, hey guys, Stephen here with Four Oaks Crafts, and I want to start a new pin turning series called Pin Turning 101. Get a lot of questions from beginners about wanting to get into pin turning, so I thought it'd be kind of neat to make a little series of videos on how to get started in pin turning. This part one video, we're going to be talking about wood lathes, talking about the parts of a wood lathe, the different terminology, wood lathe selection, and a little bit on the cost of wood lathes. So sit back, let's get started. Okay, I'm going to give you a quick rundown on the mini lathe. This is my jet mini lathe, this model JML 1014 mini lathe, and I tried to clean it up for you a little bit, but it's over 10 years. I've been pin turning over 10 years now, and so it's got a little bit of wear and tear and some stains that won't come out, but these are great for pin turning. Let me tell you a little bit about the different lathe sizes. You'll hear the word mini lathe, which this is a mini lathe. You'll hear the word midi lathe, and then you'll hear the full size lathe. And so you have just a progression of sizes, mini lathe being the smallest, then midi sort of in between, and as you're going up, the horsepower maybe changing. Some of the limitations also change on the size of the projects that you can turn. Obviously with my mini lathe, I turn a lot of small projects. I can turn small bowls, and that's kind of limited about because of the radius of the spindle here and the lathe bed. And so bigger lathes, you know, that distance gets bigger, that swing distance gets bigger. Your lathe bed gets longer, although you can buy extensions for the lathe bed on the mini lathes. So it really depends on what you want to turn and what you want to turn in the future. If you're strictly going to turn small projects like pins and small bowls, spinning tops, and that kind of thing, mini lathe is great for that. If you're going to want to do bigger bowls and bigger projects, then you might want to invest in a bigger lathe. The other good thing about the mini lathe is, as you can see, it takes up a very small space. You know, this is probably looking at, you know, maybe 3 foot by a couple of feet space here on my bench top, and that works great when you got a small garage like I do. I'm in like about a third or half of a garage space here, so it works great for small spaces. So let's talk about the parts of a lathe real quick. This part is called the headstock, and then over here you've got the headstock is going to be a stationary part where you're going to typically mount the pieces that you're turning, and then this is the tailstock over here, and as you can see, it moves back and forth. So you can vary what you're turning in between here. Basically, a lathe pushes, in most cases, can push things together, and you can turn between centers, although we'll talk about the other attachments where you don't have to have the tailstock involved. But for pin turning, you're going to be having the headstock and the tailstock involved here. This part that the tailstock is sliding on is called the lathe bed, and again, you can buy extensions for this to make it longer for longer projects, but I found this to be just fine for what I've been doing. Here's the tool rest, and you know, as you can see, you can move it around, you can adjust it up and down, you can take it out, get it out of the way. My tool rest that came with the jet is about 6 inches long, and that's ideal for anything 6 inches long or maybe less is great for pin turning, because when you're looking at a pin and a couple of blanks here, 6 inches works great. If you've got a smaller one and we're doing a smaller pin blank, you know, you can go with a smaller tool rest, but 6 inches works great for mine. The other thing is over here is the belt compartment, and I have one belt on my jet, and what I do is just move that belt around. I loosen up the motor down here and move it up. The motor is mounted right down here under the lathe, and move those belts around to change the speed or the RPM of how fast the lathe will turn. And it gives you on the back here, it tells you when you move the belt to a different location, it tells you exactly what the RPM is going to be. And I believe mine is set for 1800 RPM right now. If I were to go buy a mini lathe today though, I think I would probably get one with a variable speed. This is of course just a switch here, it turns it on, there is no variable speed control. But nowadays you can find a lot of them with variable speed control. And that's very handy if you need to change the speed. You might have to work with a different speed depending on what you're doing, maybe applying a finish or the size of the type of your material or the size of the material that you're turning. So being able to do that without having to change the belt a lot is very handy. Let's see, the other part of the lathe that I wanted to talk about is the spindle. So the lathe will come with this spindle already built on here, and it's got some threads right here. And so the threads are for attaching things like, wood chucks. If you're going to be doing some bowls, you want to hold the bowl using a wood chuck or some real small projections coming out of there. But the spindle threads also, your lathe comes with a face plate, and you can attach that face plate and screw the face plate into a piece of wood, maybe for making a bowl. So the threads are there for those type of attachments. But for pin turning, you're going to be using something more like this that's called a pin mandrel. This is a spur, and it generally comes with your lathe when you buy a mini lathe. But I want you to notice the end of these, how they both are about the same. They both have the exact same kind of taper on them, and we refer to that as the Morse Taper. For most lathes, and I know true with many lathes, these are a number 2 Morse Taper. And you may hear number 1. I don't know what lathes nowadays use a number 1 Morse Taper, but I mainly see number 2 Morse Taper. And so what this does is it slides in this, there's a hole down here in your spindle, and this slides into it. Basically it seats in there because of the taper, and it also makes this very concentric. So now when you put that in there and it seats in there, this tool or whatever, mandrel that or spur in this case, is seated in there, and it's going to turn concentrically as the spindle is turning. And then of course you can use this little tool to come in here and sort of gently tap it out. For pin turning, we're going to talk about this later, but generally use something like this called a pin mandrel, and this is a maxi pin mandrel, I think is the name of it. But again, it's got the number 2 Morse Taper, and it slides in there as well and seats. So this whole thing now turns concentrically. And of course we can take this little tool and gently tap it out. All right, another thing I wanted to show you is, and excuse me, it's a little dusty, but I normally have another attached. This is an accessory that comes separate from your mini lathe. You generally have to buy these separately, but a dust collector. And this is one I bought from Rockler, I believe, and it mounts to the lathe bed. Tube goes back to my dust collector system, and it works really great, especially when you're doing sanding. Keeps the dust down, of course, keeps you from breathing it in, keeps the dust down in your shop. Real quick word about, okay, the good thing about these lathes is you can put them anywhere. You can put them on a bench top, and what I've done here is I've got 4 points here with wood screws that I have attached the wood lathe on top of my workbench, which is very solid, and that also helps to keep the vibration down. And as I apply a little bit of force, you know, to the lathe with the turning tool, of course, it's not going to vibrate and move. And other thing I wanted, some people ask, well, what's the ideal height? And I would say it depends on your build. If you're short, medium, tall person, but you kind of want, as a general rule, you kind of want your elbow here to be almost parallel with your where you're working, you're doing your work here. So between your headstock and tailstock and your tool rest, generally as your elbow wants to kind of be at that level, so you know you're not having to crouch and move your body quite as much, and not having to crouch over quite as much either. So that's just a general rule of thumb. Mini lathes come in different price ranges. You can get some real cheap ones down as low as $100. I bought mine, but generally good ones are more than that, $300, $400 or more. I think I bought this one 10 years ago. Is about $300, but there's other brands out there. I'm not saying Jet is necessarily the best. It is very high quality, but you've also got Rikon, Nova. I think Delta still makes lathes, but there's a lot out there. But hey, I hope you enjoy this video. I know it's kind of basic, but really doing this series for those that are getting into pin turning. And so the next one, what I'm going to talk about are spend a little time on pin mandrels and how we hold the pin blanks for turning. So see you next time. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Thanks.